There is a person in your life right now who smiles when you succeed, but something flickers behind their eyes that doesn't quite match the smile. You felt it, that strange coldness, that half-second pause before they congratulate you. You told yourself you were imagining it. You weren't. Jealousy is one of the oldest poisons in human history, and the most dangerous thing about it is this: the people who carry it have convinced themselves they don't. They don't see themselves as jealous. They see themselves as concerned, as realistic, as the only one brave enough to tell you the truth. And that reframing, that self-deception dressed as virtue, is what makes them so incredibly difficult to detect, and so quietly devastating to be around. Laozi understood something about human nature that most philosophers were too polite to say out loud. He observed that people who strain, grasp, and force their way through life are always the most broken, not the most powerful, the most broken. And jealous people, if you study them long enough, are the ultimate example of this. They are always reaching, always measuring, always watching what you're building while their own foundation crumbles beneath their feet. Here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say at dinner. Jealousy is not about you. It never was. It is a confession. A silent, desperate confession that the person feeling it has lost faith in their own life. Think about that for a moment. When someone is genuinely at peace with who they are and where they're going, your success doesn't threaten them. It doesn't even register as a threat. They can celebrate you easily, effortlessly, because your light doesn't dim theirs. But the jealous person? Your light is an accusation to them. Every promotion you earn, every relationship that flourishes, every dream you chase and actually catch, it becomes evidence. Evidence that they chose wrong, stayed too long, gave up too soon, settled for less. And they cannot forgive you for holding that mirror up to them, even though you never meant to. This is where Laozi's thinking cuts deepest. He wrote about the nature of water, how it doesn't fight the rocks in its path, how it finds its way around, below, through without forcing. And he observed that the people who exhaust themselves fighting against the current of life, who resist, who strain, who clench their fists at everything that flows freely, these are the people who suffer the most. Not the most. They just suffer the loudest while pretending they're fine. Jealous people are exhausted. That's the secret they'll never tell you. Keeping score is a full-time occupation. Monitoring your growth, calculating your gains, rehearsing explanations for why your success doesn't count, why it was luck, connections, timing, anything but genuine effort, takes an enormous amount of mental energy. They are running a comparison algorithm in their head 24 hours a day, and it is draining them alive. But here's where it gets darker. Jealousy doesn't stay internal forever. It mutates. It finds expression. And the most sophisticated jealous people, the ones you have to watch most carefully, never confront you directly. That would be too honest, too revealing. Instead, they work in the shadows of your confidence. They become the voice that introduces doubt. They ask questions that sound like concern but land like daggers. Are you sure that's a good idea? Isn't that a bit risky? I just worry about you, that's all. They are there in the moment you're most uncertain, most vulnerable, most open. And they plant seeds. Small ones. Quiet ones. Seeds that they never have to water because your own mind will do it for them. This is what Laozi called acting without acting. Wu Wei, the principle that the most powerful forces in the universe move without appearing to move. A jealous person who has mastered this, consciously or not, doesn't push you off the cliff. They just make you question whether you should be standing near the edge at all. And then they watch, patiently. If you fall back, they feel relief. If you retreat into a smaller life, a safer version of yourself, they breathe easier. Not because they hated you, but because your smallness confirms their own. It tells them the world is hard for everyone. It tells them they made the right call when they didn't try. Your limitation becomes their permission slip. Now here's the part that should disturb you most. You have probably done this too. not with malice, not with planning, but you have felt that flicker, that ungenerous moment when someone else's good news created a small, quiet weight in your chest. That moment is jealousy in its seed form. Laozi would say that moment is important, not because it makes you a bad person, but because what you do with it reveals everything about who you are. Do you feed that seed? Do you let it grow roots, build narrative, recruit your ego into its service until you're no longer rooting for the person standing in front of you? Or do you let it pass, like water that's a stone passed through it, moving around the obstacle without becoming it? Most people are never honest enough to sit with that question. There's another layer to this that almost no one talks about. The most dangerous, jealous people in your life are often the ones who love you, or believe they do. Because love and jealousy are not opposites. They can exist in the same breath, in the same sentence, in the same embrace. A parent who subtly discourages a child's ambitions because that ambition triggers something they never resolve in themselves. A friend who is the first to call after failure, and the last to call after segura, and the last to call after success. A partner who says they're proud of you, but creates friction every time you start to rise. These relationships are the hardest to navigate because the jealousy is wrapped in genuine feeling. It's not pure, it's tangled. And Laozi's wisdom here is this: you cannot fix what someone else refuses to see in themselves. You can only decide how much of your light you're willing to dim in order to keep the peace. And that is not a small decision. Because here is what silence and shrinking always cost you. When you make yourself smaller to accommodate someone's inability to handle your growth. When you stop talking about your wins, quiet your excitement, downgrade your dreams in conversations, you are not being humble. You are being slowly erased. And you will feel it. Not immediately. But over months, over years, you will notice that the version of yourself that exists in certain relationships is thinner, quieter, less alive than the version of yourself you are when you're alone or with people who genuinely want more for you. Laozi described the sage, the truly wise person, as someone who leads without controlling, who accomplishes without announcing, who moves through the world without being diminished by what the world cannot understand about them. That is the real challenge when dealing with jealous people. Not to expose them, not to confront them, not to try to make them see what they're doing. The challenge is to remain whole, to continue growing in the direction that is true to you, without needing their understanding, without seeking their approval, and without letting their quiet war against your potential become a war you fight inside yourself. Because that is what they want, not consciously maybe, but structurally. They want your success to cost you something. They want your ambition to feel dangerous. They want you second-guessing in private what you projected in public. And every time you pull back, every time you hesitate, every time you make your life smaller so their discomfort decreases, they win without ever having to admit there was a competition. Refuse that. Not loudly, not with confrontation, not with announcements or declarations. Refuse it the way water refuses to be stopped, quietly, persistently, by simply continuing to flow. The most powerful response to a jealous person is not argument. It is not exposure. It is not even distance, though distance is sometimes necessary. The most powerful response is a life so clearly lived in alignment with your own nature that their narrative about you cannot find a surface to stick to. Build so honestly. Move so authentically. Commit so fully to becoming what you actually are, not what you perform for others, not what makes the uncomfortable, that jealousy simply has nothing to grip. Laozi said that the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. And in the same way, the version of you that can be reduced, labeled, envied, competed with, that is not the real you. The real you is deeper than their story about you, more original than their comparison, more enduring than their temporary need to feel like they're not losing. Know that. Let them measure. You just grow. Let them whisper. You just move. Let them smile with cold eyes. You just keep building. Because the ancient truth that Laozi left for us, the one that survives every empire, every ego, every generation of people who spent their lives measuring other people's gardens while their own went to seed, is simply this: the person at war with your peace is already losing theirs. And you were never the enemy. You were just the mirror they couldn't face.